Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Turnstile album, Never Enough. Never Enough is the fourth album from the American rock band Turnstile, who recently have been going through quite a bit of a sound change, with much of their early material being primarily rooted in hardcore punk. And then their 2021 album, Glow On, sees them experimenting a lot more with dream pop and much dreamier effects, and in a way, almost but not quite shoegaze. And now Never Enough is seeing them in even more of a transitional period as they still continue to leave the hardcore punk behind a lot more. And I think overall they actually do a great job at showing a lot of their versatility and demonstrating how they are definitely so much more than just another 2 minute punk band, which definitely comes through on the incredible performances on this album, both on the punk side of things and the dream pop side of things, with them doing a genuinely great job at both genres. But despite how good they are at performing and playing both genres, what I think they unfortunately don't do that well on this album is balance the two genres, with a lot of the transition between the songs and even within the songs often sounding quite harsh and very forced. And overall, I think it does actually end up making this album a lot more inconsistent than I would have hoped it to be. The title track, though, is a strong start to the album as they immediately start to lean into the style that they are now going for, just with a lot of the very typical features of the genre, with lots of really dreamy sound effects and much softer vocals than the usual style, which they also again do really well. Slightly heavier guitars do eventually come in on this song, however, they have a very fuzzy and overly distorted sound effect that gives them this almost shoegaze adjacent kind of sound, although I wouldn't go so far as to actually call it shoegaze. And then the guitar solo as well is absolutely fantastic and really does just make you feel like you're floating when you listen to it. Soul unfortunately does have quite a harsh transition, which is already kind of showing what I was talking about earlier, which is the lack of balance between punk and dream pop, which I think is quite a shame because the very punchy guitar riff that opens this song is actually really good, but I think coming off of such a dreamy and spacey song, it just really doesn't fit in all that well. The transition aside, this song is genuinely amazing with so many incredible riffs, and the vocals as well are also really good. I Care is the closest thing that this album has to a full-blown pop song, with a really fun guitar riff as well as just a much more pop-like song structure. And to be honest, I really hope that this direction of pop is not the band's future sound and they continue with the more shoegaze-adjacent dream pop, because that's clearly what they're amazing at doing. Whereas this track definitely is just one of the much more generic moments and does even feel a bit annoying in some places. The brief outbursts it has of the much heavier vocal and guitar moments are still really good, but just aren't quite enough to carry the song all the way. Dreaming is then a much shorter and punchier punk song, but still with a lot of elements of dream pop that we've been seeing so far, which does make it a really unique song and ultimately does still give me hope for the future of the band's sound, given if I think that they can just refine this kind of style and create a better balance between two such vastly different genres that they really could make something amazing out of it. Light Design is also a really unique song, being almost somewhat electronic leaning but still undeniably punk. And while there's not really a whole lot else to it, with it just being pretty much a punk song with electronic instruments and only 2 minutes long, it's still just really cool to see the band experimenting with various different styles and most of the time doing it quite well. Dull is a song that definitely doesn't live up to its name, having some of the most killer and heaviest riffs on the album, again only in short bursts, but to be honest I wouldn't want it any other way with how insane some of these moments can be. I think some of the in-between parts are maybe just a little bit too repetitive, but overall the much heavier moments are, I think, easily enough to carry this song. Sun Shower starts off as just a quick and punchy punk song with some absolutely insane drumming. However, going into the latter half of the track, it goes into some almost ambient and new age type stuff, and I'm actually quite impressed by the transition within the song, given how up until this point, just with, like I said, a lot of my issues with this album so far being mostly just with the balance of genres. However, I think on this one they actually do it really well. Look Out For Me immediately just throws this incredible riff at you, which does remain quite consistent for pretty much the whole song, but does occasionally split off into these other really unique moments and a handful of much needed interludes in such an intense track as well. The guitar riff that then takes the song into its latter half is also amazing, and I really love the long and very chill outro it has too. Seeing Stars is just a well put together rock song. I think a little bit more could have been done with it because it had a lot of potential, but unfortunately it is quite short and quite repetitive, which I think is a shame because with just a little bit more to it, it easily could have been one of my favourites. Although I will say that I absolutely love the guitar riff towards the end, being easily my favourite moment on the song. Birds is just classic Turnstile. It's a very short and to the point punk song, which in the past has been pretty much what they do best, and as much as I am loving this new direction they're taking, or at least trying to take, the odd raw punk banger that they throw in there on this album is always a welcome surprise. Slow Dive, I think, is another pretty frustrating song given how much potential it had with that incredible riff it opens with. However, the riff pretty much remains the same for the whole song, and it does get get quite boring quite quickly. Luckily though, it does take a bit of a backseat when the vocals come in, which I think are definitely some of the best on the album, just with how passionate they are, but they really do have to carry the whole song with how little substance there is to everything else going on. Time is Happening has this incredible and again very fuzzy guitar riff, which I think is a style that this album actually should have a bit more of because they actually do it really well. And then that combined with the very dreamy vocals again give it that very slight element of shoegaze, which I think is a genre that I think I would really like to see them do in the future because they're clearly laying really good groundworks for it. Magic Man does have some good ideas on show, however, I think that just the lack of things going on this track definitely do hinder it quite a bit. It does give the vocals somewhat of a chance to shine a little bit more, however, I think that they just aren't quite enough to carry the entire song with just how little else is actually happening. And I think overall, especially for a closing track, there really should have been just something a little bit more to make it a bit more interesting. And so I do think that this album's lack of consistency is somewhat frustrating, given how Turnstile are clearly incredible at making punk music, which has already been established on many albums before, but even some of the dream pop moments are also incredible, but it's just the balance between the two genres that I think is where this album does start to fall quite a bit. And I think that if they can either just find a better balance between the two genres or just commit a bit more to doing a more full-blown dream pop album, in the hopefully not too distant future, they could absolutely be onto something incredible. As inconsistent as it is, they have clearly laid some incredible groundworks with this album, and which is why I'm going to give this album a 6 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.